Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we're going to revisit Throne of the Grim Captain from Ixalan with all the additions from Lorwyn Eclipsed. Our key build around is this 2-mana legendary artifact which can tap to mill 2 cards, filling our graveyard. At some point we can craft with a dinosaur, merfolk, pirate and vampire by paying 4 mana and exiling those respective creatures from either our battlefield or our graveyard. Of course graveyard is preferable. And then we get to create the Grim Captain, a 7/7 legendary skeleton spirit pirate with menace, trample, lifelink and hexproof, saying whenever the Grim Captain attacks, each opponent sacrifices a non-land permanent of their choice, and then we may put an exiled creature card used to craft the Grim Captain onto the battlefield under our control, tapped and attacking. So there's a lot going on here, but the brief version is we just want to fill our graveyard, make the Grim Captain, and then after 1 or 2 attacks we'll usually win the game. And we can even attack with a hasty Grim Captain if we control Corpses of the Lost. This enchantment can generate a 2/2 skeleton pirate token when it enters, and also gives all skeletons we control 1 additional power and haste, including the one we generated. And it also includes any other skeletons, which include the Grim Captain itself, but also our Changelings, since we're now playing 4 copies of Mutable Explorer, a 1/1 shapeshifter with a Changeling ability, so it has every creature type, including all the ones we need to craft our Throne of the Grim Captain, as well as Skeleton, so it can also pick up the 1 extra power and haste from Corpses of the Lost. And when it enters we get to make a Mutavault token, which is a land that can for 1 mana also turn into a 2/2 creature with all creature types. So in a pinch we can even animate a Mutavault and then use both Mutable Explorer and Mutavault to help craft our Throne into the Grim Captain if we're maybe lacking some creature types in our graveyard. And then besides Mutable Explorer, we also have the full playset of a Nameless Inversion, which is an instant speed removal spell, giving a creature +3 power, -3 toughness until end of turn, also loses all creature types. And it's also a Changeling, so we can also potentially exile a Nameless Inversion from our graveyard to help craft the Grim Captain. Of course, as an instant, we won't be able to put it into play tapped and attacking, so that's the one drawback, but it still gives the deck some much needed interaction, and that 1 extra type in the graveyard can also make the difference. And then rounding out the deck, of course, we do need some other creatures, dinosaurs, merfolk, pirates and vampires. We've got 8 merfolk total, 4 copies of the Scout as a 1-drop that helps us explore, so can hit additional land drops or maybe fill the graveyard or find some of our key combo pieces. Then we also have 2 copies of the Floodpits Drowner, giving us a bit more interaction, especially nice against any of the green ramp decks, being able to tap down a Llanowar Elves, for instance, or maybe a land that a Banshee Cub earthbended onto. And then 2 copies of Kiora, helping us draw 2 and discard 2 when it enters, so that can also maybe set up our Throne of the Grim Captain, and it's also very synergistic with Throne, as that can enable Threshold, at which point Kiora can make an 8/8 token when it attacks with 7 or more cards in our graveyard. And then we also have a few pirates, of course, 4 copies of Spyglass Siren, another cheap creature making a map token when it enters, so the map can also find additional lands or potentially dig towards our missing combo pieces. And the map token is also another great way to descend with Corpses of the Lost, and so is exploring with a Scout if we don't keep the card on top, so we can maybe pick up the enchantment in grindy matchups, recast it, make another skeleton pirate, so that also helps out. And then we've got 4 more pirates here with a Staunch Crewmate, a 2/1, lets us look at the top 4 cards of our library. We can reveal an artifact or pirate from among them and put it into our hand. So this can help find Throne, as well as more Crewmates, Spyglass Sirens, or all 8 of our Changelings, so it can also find a Nameless Inversion or Mutable Explorer and put it in hand, so the hit rate is quite high. Then we only have 4 vampires with a Bloodletter as our curve topper. That's also why the mana base is heavily skewed towards black, so we can potentially hardcast a 2/4 flyer that essentially doubles our damage output. This one's also very nice to have in our graveyard to then craft with our Throne of the Grim Captain, so we can potentially attack with the Grim Captain, put a Bloodletter into play, tapped and attacking, and now our Grim Captain can essentially attack for 14 damage if it goes unblocked, which can also quickly close out the game. But at least at 4 mana, the Bloodletter is still realistic to hardcast, especially with the additional mana acceleration that the deck provides. And then we do not have any actual dinosaurs, so that's where we are relying on Nameless Inversion and Mutable Explorer, so those can provide the missing type. And then our mana base is, as we said, mostly skewed towards black. Breeding Pool, the only non-black source in the deck. Otherwise, we've got all of the blue-black and black-green shock lands that are now available in Standard, complemented by the Verge lands, at least the black ones. And then rounding out the deck, also 2 Blooming Marsh, 2 Undercity Sewers, another way to surveil and maybe enable corpses of the lost, and then 2 basic swamps in case we need to search them up. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. We have what looks like a functional hand, missing our throne, but we've got crewmate to maybe help find it. And then a third land, or even a fourth, are still appreciated. Do get a surveil to start out. And I'll keep a land on top. Swamp into negotiation, exile a card. Probably the Spyglass. Already have a pirate with a crewmate. And we found some removal, probably better than the Siren here. And then I could first play Corpses, and then the Mutable Explorer will also pick up the +1 power and haste, as it's technically a skeleton. We're fine if our creatures get removed, as long as we'll eventually find Throne. But that's also where Corpses is useful for these grindy matchups. Feed the Swarm actually would have been a way to destroy the enchantment. But this is also pretty good if our opponent's on some sort of discard deck, since we'll at some point be able to pick it up and maybe replay it. Another negotiation, can grab an inversion this time. And Bloodletter is tempting. I think I still go for Mutable Explorer first. And then next turn, Bloodletter potentially presents lethal. Opponent's got their own. Can't quite take it out with a Nameless Inversion, although we did find a Throne. But I think I still should play my Bloodletter, since Throne I don't have 6 mana to play and potentially craft. Yeah, I guess that's still fine. And then next turn we could also animate the Mutavaults. Opponent does have a Shoot the Sheriff for the Bloodletter, however. Don't know if they can afford to attack, they don't. Alright, well, Mutable Explorer once again does count as a skeleton. So you could play it, attack, and then Inversion can finish off the Bloodletter. Or we can get the Throne going, which is maybe more fun. Sure, I'll just go for Explorer. Play Throne. Pass a turn. Now they could have that 5 mana sorcery that makes me lose half of my life, which with Bloodletter would be lethal. So that would have been the argument for forcing the issue with Nameless Inversion. Trajectory's fine. And another Bloodletter. 2 of them do add up, but opponent's on empty now. And I don't think we'll have any difficulties transforming our Grim Captain. Can first mill 2 more cards. Then crafts. Selecting Vampire, Pirates, and let's say Dinosaur and Merfolk. And I can still animate a Mutavaults. And attack, putting in another Bloodletter. Opponent's going to sacrifice one of theirs. And yeah, there we go. That's the power of Grim Captain. Eventually overpowering other mid-range decks. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Don't love this hand, but at least we have some interaction. Crewmate to try and find our throne. But we do start out with a tapped land. Turn 1 Swamp Duress. Can take the inversion. Alright, now I can play Siren on 1, which is probably worth it. A Drowner will be a good answer to Unstoppable Slasher if that shows up. Opponent's blue-black instead. Alright, in that case, I want to make sure Crewmate resolves before the opponent can maybe counter it. Even though if I grab a throne, our opponent could maybe snipe it with another discard spell. Chaining Crewmates is not a bad plan. Do also like the Explorer, but won't be able to necessarily play it until turn 4. Yeah, I'll just get another Crewmate. We are a bit pirate flooded here. So that's where grabbing the Changeling would have helped. Alright, so step 1. Can just attack for 3, or I can go exploring and maybe bait out a removal spell. Let's just attack and then see if another Crewmate resolves. Found our throne this time. And then probably don't need lane number 5. Do have to prepare for a sweeper next turn. So this would be kind of the ideal turn to resolve the throne. But our opponent does have plenty of blue mana up. They could have one of their hard counters. How about we explore first? Because maybe I want to play Throne as a follow-up to a sweeper effect instead. Once the opponent's tapped out. Can flash and Drowner end of turn as well. And they can't keep taking 5 forever. So I think that's reasonable. Opponent did have the region to draw discards, so they still got to use their mana effectively. Discarding a cover-up, so they have another one in hand, no doubt. Can exile the Crewmates, which would also snipe the one in hand. But we'll still have plenty of pirates for Throne at least. Alright, opponent actually got rid of the Spyglass, which I guess they know we had another copy in hand. So those are gone, but prefer still having the Crewmate left over. And this is our best window to resolve Throne. I think I still play the Drowner, even though I could maybe tap a creature down with it later. So I can play Throne. And then maybe next turn we can craft it. Find an Explorer. And play Scouts. Alright, hit you for 2. Gonna wait on milling, because they might mess with my graveyard. Now we do not have a way to give our Captain haste, missing the skeleton enchantments. That would be our best top deck. Crafting also only happens as a sorcery, so does give them the opportunity to take out our creature. Liliana Dreadhorde General, that was unexpected. Can make me sack 2 creatures, goes for a zombie.
This is more enjoyable than slaying demons.
Mill the Bloodletter, found a Drowner, okay. Yeah, if I craft the Throne, I am kind of overextending into another board wipe. So, if I Drowner the token, I can deal 5 to Liliana, that's still not quite enough. So yeah, Liliana's an interesting twist. Could also tap down the zombie, just hit my opponent for 5. Question is whether to play the Mutable Explorer. Because yeah, Liliana is definitely a long-term problem. Especially when paired with sweepers. I think I play the Explorer. And then just attack Liliana with my creatures. Opponent trades for Drowner.
Do not ruin my dress.
They get to draw a card.
Don't speak ill.
And then maybe I can tap down a zombie. Terminus is fine. Liliana's gonna cash in to make us sack 2 creatures. That works.
No way but my way.
So they could technically animate a Restless Reef to block, but opponent goes for a stock up instead. Alright, so gonna mill for 2, and then do I flash in the Drowner anyways? I think I do. Corpses would have been our best draw for sure, but Exhale counters Drowner, so now Coast could be clear for another copy, but we found a Bloodletter still pretty good here. Gonna put the opponent to 1. If they cast a board wipe, the creature land can maybe still get them. And a cover up once again. That happens. They do have 3 mana up, so they could answer my Mutavault. And we're getting rid of Bloodletters at 1 life. Bloodletter's not all that exciting anymore. I think I would have gotten rid of the Mutable Explorers, perhaps. I don't have to keep milling. Opponent's gonna consult. So if we top deck Corpses of the Lost, we can potentially win this. I guess I could have the Hex to destroy the token. But yeah, there's also Mutavault I need to answer. So this kind of assumes they have a Hex in hand. Otherwise they probably wouldn't have made that play. I'll just take my draw step, find the sewers. See what's next. Verge. So, yeah, odds are pretty high that the opponent's got the Hex. I'll still make them use it, and then I'll craft with the throne. Alright, never mind. Mutavault goes the distance. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a fine hand. Got a 1, 2, 3, 4 curve. Just missing Throne of the Grim Captain, which we can maybe hit with a crewmate. And Drowner, I'm gonna decline. Still need land 4. But if we're up against a Badger Mold deck, Drowner can certainly have its uses. Turn 1 Island instead. So Spell Snare is of course another popular card nowadays. We'll see if they have it. It looks like it. Yep. Blue-red Lessons with Spell Snare. Can resolve corpses. And then Bloodletter, some decent pressure as well. But we are starting to run out of steam, so if our opponent's got a ton of spot removal here, we could still be in trouble. If they tap out for Monument, they would take 10. It's gonna be a Grand instead. Can still attack into it at least. And Demonstration deals with our skeleton. So now 2 Lessons in Graveyard. Still gonna go for Bloodletter. Normally 4 toughness would be relatively safe against a red deck, but between Demonstration and the combustion technique, they can pretty easily take it out. As they have another Demonstration, so now a Grand's discount is also enabled. So yeah, it's not looking great. Gotta hope to maybe find, of course, the Throne of the Grim Captain would be awesome. Another Corpses. At least we can descend with a Scout if we hit a non-land card. Kiora would be a fine draw. but I'm thinking we still bin it for corpses. And get to pick it back up. One potential downside is if we draw Throne, I wouldn't be able to immediately give the Captain haste. But I think we're still missing one type since we don't have a Changeling in circulation. We've mostly dealt ourselves a bunch of damage with the shock lines. So our opponent still hasn't found their Monument to Endurance, which is their actual win condition. And Combustion Technique the Scout. They are maybe on a more controlling build with a few more counter spells, so they might have ditched the Storm Chaser's talent, which some of these lesson decks have done. So then they're even lighter on win conditions. And Siren's not bad either, since that's another way to maybe pick up corpses again. And with the map token. And a Throne I will have to keep since it's just too good to ignore. Hit you for 4. And then next turn I can play Throne, and if I mill a Changeling, immediately transform. Grand still digging, but the alternative of binning Throne to pick up corpses also could have been reasonable. Firebending Lesson takes out our skeleton, take 1. Alright, let's see if we can mill any of our 8 Changelings. And we cannot. But it does allow us to pick up corpses again for next turn. Although if I don't draw land, I'll be a mana short of corpses and paying the 4 mana to craft. Although we're getting to a point where, with our opponent at 2 life, it doesn't take much to cross the finish line. Our opponent finally found their monument, but they are now empty-handed, so they need Gran to enable it. Still playing Agnakella, which can also draw this card, enabling the monument to drain for 3. And Drowner the draw. So step 1, I guess I can mill with Throne, see what's up. Opponent's gonna draw this card in response. Enabling monuments. We did mill a Changeling, so I could technically craft, but I may as well play the corpses. And then next turn the Captain would have haste. This also assumes they have an answer to the skeleton token, and since they do not, now they're just dead. Alright, so Throne showed up just a little bit too late, but it didn't matter. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand. We're good against green ramp decks with 2 early removal spells. Still hoping to find our Throne of the Grim Captain. Blue-white, so if it's control, then having Nameless Inversion's not ideal. Mutable Explorer I will keep. And then I could explore again, or I could save this to maybe enable corpses later. I think I still just sack it now for the extra counter. And then I first want to play Corpses of the Lost anyway, so then the Mutable Explorer also gains haste. It is the artifact deck. So, probably not our best matchup. But at least we've got a relatively aggressive start. They can still take the wind out of our sails with the Star Cage, of course, which would exile all my creatures. And there it is. Although Mutable Explorer is still a decent follow-up. Star Cage also an answer to Throne of the Grim Captain. So yeah, had I kept the map token, they would have exiled it with a Star Cage. but it is a way to descend with Corpses of the Lost, so we can pick it back up and recast it. Opponent's got their win condition in play now. And the Enigma Jewel. And the lane, so... yeah, unfortunately we're lacking a bit of oomph. If I had a Bloodletter here, I could have just dealt 10 damage, I guess close to lethal. But now we're just getting in for 5. Could technically use Inversion on my own creature just to pick up corpses again. I'm gonna try and maybe double Inversion an opposing creature. Second Synthesizer. So they get to make a token, 5/5. Anything else? So what's my best sequencing? I can just now double Nameless Inversion. Opponent could be sitting on Saw Blades, but that would also enable corpses. So yeah, let's just do this now. Alright, there's a Bloodletter. It's kind of what I was hoping for. So if they don't have removal, they're just dead. And there we go, that's 10 damage. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and the triple Corpses of the Lost opener. It is very good in multiples, so sign me up. Can start with a Scout, maybe get some damage in. Next turn tapped Sewers. And then one Corpses after another. Opponent is on a Badger Mole ramp deck. Could give us some trouble, since we don't have any removal here. Spyglass, I don't particularly want to draw, although it is a 1-drop I could cast alongside Corpses on turn 4. But yeah, turn 2 Badger Mole is going to be hard to beat when we don't have an answer. And yeah, double Badger Mole opener, so it doesn't get much better. I don't think Corpses of the Lost, even 3 of them, are going to be good enough, since we're just going to get overwhelmed too quickly. But yeah, this is the matchup where we want our Nameless Inversion and Floodpit's Drowner. Can also maybe tap down a land in the opponent's upkeep. They are splashing red, there's Ouroboros. On turn 3. They can further empty their hands. Badger Moles are attacking, may as well wait to jump next turn. And for now, play another Corpses, which does let my Skeletons attack. But yeah, pretty sure we're still dead next turn. Even if I throw a Scout under the bus. And our opponent just hard casting a Crater Hoof. We're never beating that. Still get the Ouroboros trigger on top of that, giving everyone 10+1 counters. And our opponents got even more here with a devastating Onslaught. And they are only attacking with 4 creatures, but 2 of them have Trample. And still hit me for over 100 damage. Alright, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a fine hand. I'm gonna still run out Sewers turn 1, even though it can be a way to enable Corpses, so we can recast it, make another Skeleton. With 2 Bloodletters, we'll have plenty of ways to spend our mana in the later turns. So then we're mostly looking for Throne of the Grim Captain. Bloodletter number 3 can go. But having one in the graveyard's not bad, because we can maybe craft using our throne. Opponent blue-black. And Mutable Explorer is also pretty good here. Crewmate into Crewmate, also decent for grindy matchups. So, hoping corpses can resolve here. Would also set up a hasty Explorer. I see opponent on the Sultai self-mill deck. So don't need to fear a ton of interaction. They do still have Awaken the Undead, of course. And then eventually they can wrath my board. So putting as many creatures in my own graveyard as possible is also beneficial. And they left Arden in the graveyard as opposed to picking it up. Did find a throne, so could already give that a shot. Also not opposed to playing corpses to eventually give our Grim Captain haste. And then there's also the Mutable Explorer option to give us an extra mana next turn, especially useful if we draw a land, so I can double spell corpses with Throne. So there's already a lot to think about. Kind of like the early pressure from corpses. Might force the opponent to prematurely get back a Bringer of the Last Gift without having a fully stocked graveyard. Alright, not the most exciting turn 3. So yeah, now Throne looks good. Can play it, mill, and then scout afterwards. Found a land, which is good. Hit you for 5. I'll leave the corpses in play. And then what types are we missing? We have Vampire, Merfolk, Pirates, so Changeling would count as our dinosaur. Can still hope to mill one next turn. Opponent could also Kivero here and just turn into Arden, which in turn can also steal the Bloodletter, so that's also very effective. Never mind, Kivero turns into Floodpit's Drowner instead. Maybe they meant to go for Arden, but kind of messed up. Alright, so what are my options now? I think we're still looking to mill with Throne, see what we mill first. And we did mill a Changeling, so yeah. I can now craft, selecting Vampire, Dinosaur, Pirate, and Merfolk. We have the corpses in play already, so this has haste. Opponent's gonna sack their only creature and die on the spot. Well, that was a costly mistake. Get to put in the Bloodletter for double damage, but I'll take the win. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand. Turn 1 scout, turn 2 probably crewmate. Got some removal. And Mutable Explorer would be pretty decent to just cast as well. Counts as a skeleton for corpses. Makes extra mana. Alright. Opponent could be hanging on to a Spell Snare. So I don't know how I feel about playing the crewmate here. But I guess we'll find out. That resolves. And that misses. So just a 2 mana 2/1. Although getting rid of 4 lanes in a way. So we're maybe a bit closer to drawing Throne of the Grim Captain after all. If they keep up counterspell mana, I do want to make sure Corpses actually resolves. Cavern Naming Survivor means they're on the Kona combo deck. So they do have Exhale as a potential counterspell. Good thing Inversion can potentially answer Kona if they cannot give it hexproof. So if we knew for a fact they didn't have a counterspell, of course, jam Corpses. I'm gonna respect the Exhale, which they did not have. Alright, so get in for 4. They also did not play one of their planets yet, so they will not be able to play Kona and immediately tap it. So we're definitely safe to go for Corpses here. Can even pay the 2 for Exhale, and I can still animate Mutavault, which is also conveniently a skeleton. But yeah, if our opponent had a planet in play, I would definitely have to respect it and keep up Nameless Inversion to answer Kona to prevent them from potentially winning on the spot. Now we can afford to attack all out. Opponent might have Lost in the Maze to tap one of my creatures down. And that also shuts down Nameless Inversion from potentially answering Kona if they do have a way to tap it down. But we still have a lot of pressure here. So we should be good to go. Cavern into Kona, but it's not tapped. And we can just take it out. And that'll do it. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have our throne, some interaction. Yeah, this hand's promising. Turn 1 scout can potentially find an extra land, which we'll need. And the Verges are perfect in this deck since they make the non-black mana to start out, to cast our various 1-drops. And then once we get a shock land in play, they make black to hardcast Bloodletter. But now I'm happy to put it in the graveyard for Throne. Turn 1 Swamp. Yeah, I'm tempted to just play Throne before they can make me discard it. And then still need to draw land for next turn. Once we find land 3, Kiora can help find land number 4. Opponent black-green. So they could have answers to Throne. Mill 2 lands, of course, and draw another Throne. The classic. And now Nameless Inversion is tempting, or I can hold it to answer Ouroboros before it puts counters on the team. Let's try that approach. It's going to be an Earthbender Ascension instead. And a Fabled Passage can enable it some more. So now do I Nameless Inversion the Elves anyways? This might not be an Ouroboros deck after all. Could see the Hex take out Scout. Yep. Okay, in that case, see what we mill. 2 creatures, take out your Elves. And hope to draw land, which we did. Alright, so now the question, corpses versus Kiora. Kiora is active, so they kinda have to answer it, so I think I prefer that, even though we potentially give up on a hasty captain. If I were to draw another land, actually would have gotten there. Now, our opponent could also have some graveyard hate. Cover up, I guess they cannot cast with Collect Evidence yet. So still leaning discard Bloodletter for a second Throne. And then I guess it's Crewmate. So we'll see if they can answer Kiora, or if we get to make an 8/8. They are looking through the graveyard. It may not be a bad idea to get the corpses in play first. Alright, shoot the Sheriff Kiora, makes sense. So they still won't be able to collect evidence next turn. And a Bat. Alright, Bat is annoying, since that does snipe my corpses now. But that just means we'll have to go for Grim Captain. So corpses is gone. May as well mill for 2. Almost all the Bloodletters are in the graveyard. Yeah, I mean, I don't love our opponent casting a sweeper next turn, but maybe if they're playing Deep Cavern Bat, they don't have one. So what are my options? Definitely a Bloodletter, since we've got plenty. Don't have to go for Kiora if we suspect removal. Probably want the Explorer. Pirates. So Kiora versus Scout. I think I'll hedge a little bit and go for Scout, since it is still realistic for us to transform a second throne in the event of a board wipe, and then it's nicer to have a Kiora left over that we can put in play. Not too many other ways for the opponent to get rid of a hexproof creature. They are looking at the graveyards, and her opponent scoops it up. Alright, I guess the Grim Captain claims another victim. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Hand is functional. Missing throne, but we've got a few ways to look for it. And otherwise still a reasonable mid-rangey hand. Turn 1 island, Gran. That's gonna meet a Nameless Inversion. Since I also would not have a good block, so they would get a free draw discard. And next turn, either Kiora or Explorer. Probably go for Explorer first. Let them trade back and forth a few removal spells, and then Kiora threatens to make an 8/8. Okay, opponent maybe kept the one lander hoping Gran would find a land. Still going for Explorer here, and then next turn we can double spell Scout and Kiora, or play Bloodletter. Opponent takes a trade. They found a Spire Bluff, so their mana woes should be over, since they probably have a few card draw effects to find more. And goes for the talent. Crewmate's a pretty good way to help find a copy of Throne of the Grim Captain. Alternatively, Bloodletter, essentially attack for 2. At 4 toughness, it's not necessarily safe in the lesson matchup when they have Arrow's Demonstration. So, yeah, not opposed to Crewmates. If I go for Kiora, we could already threaten to make an 8/8, so they have to take it out. So maybe we'll start with a Scout. Find a land. Play Kiora. And then one Bloodletter can maybe go. So we have one for Grim Captain in the graveyard. Sewers can maybe still keep the land. And then next turn we have a lot of options. Can double spell Crewmate with Bloodletter. Opponent's gonna indeed take out Kiora. And Demonstration can clean up my 1 toughness creatures. That's fine, assuming we eventually find Throne. So, kind of like Crewmate first. Into another Crewmate. Or we can Corpses, which is a card I do want to get in play eventually. Even though Crewmate into Crewmates, assuming we find another 2-drop, would have been slightly more mana efficient. And Gran gets a second chance. 3 lessons already in the graveyard. And the Monument with a discount, talent already in play. So yeah, if we don't close out the game quickly, opponent's gonna take over. So let's see what happens. Another Crewmate. Although at this point I should probably cast a Bloodletter. And then we can maybe still try again next turn. We've probably seen about half of our deck with all these Crewmate triggers. Gran forced to trade. And I can pick up the Corpses. I don't think I need to. There's also Mutavault we can activate. And Gran the third. Although our opponent might be too far behind. Alright, Technique, a nice answer to the Bloodletter. So yeah, especially for opponents got to draw 3 here. The game is far from over. And yep, opponent's gonna draw 3. bounce a skeleton. Trigger talent, in turn triggering monuments. Another corpses is pretty good. Start with crewmates. And that's another swing and a miss. So then corpses, animate mutavaults. Opponent's going to be forced to jump. Still take 6. So they're going to need something special. A second talent, discarding a third copy. They need another draw 3, and they actually found it. So the game keeps on going. Having to discard Accumulate Wisdom has to sting. But there's a lot of threats they need to deal with. And they do not have any discounts. Both talents level 1. And yeah, that's just too much for them to handle. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a hand that just needs a third land really for corpses, and then eventually land 4. Can play a fair game without Throne, but if we draw it, I'll be pretty happy. Facing a black-white, life gain maybe. Can keep up Nameless Inversion. Could have also played Tap Breeding Pool. So they do appear to be a more controlling deck. So it could be a good matchup for corpses. Opponent's gonna exile the skeleton. Don't have additional copies in my deck, but they do still get to take a look. So if they're trying to extract all of my win conditions, the end will now give them some more intel, and can expect them to have the Deadly Cover-Up, perhaps the 4 mana extraction as well. But I'm just gonna play another corpses. And then get you for 4. And pick these back up. At least one of them. Could leave the other in play for now. Corpses not technically being a creature does help play around a Deadly Cover-Up. Bonus down to 12. And alright, the Umbral God was unexpected. Although I can actually take it out with double Nameless Inversion here. Yeah, I guess we'll still get rid of it here. And hope they don't have a second copy. Although next turn I'll have a better turn with corpses plus mutable for a ton of haste damage. Alright, it's gonna be Ashiok next. Can make a pair of blockers. Still liking corpses plus mutable. So what makes sense? Can send everyone at Ashiok. Can go face with everyone. If they trade for Explorer, I can pick up corpses. Could just send the 2 pirates at Ashiok. Then they can chump to keep it alive. I think we just send everyone at Ashiok. And then they may not even want to trade. They still do. Alright, now I do think I pick up both corpses. So we've got Sweeper Insurance. Could backfire if they do have the 4-mana sorcery, name a card, exile it from my hand, graveyard and library. But then we're still gonna make decent plays with a Bloodletter and Kiora. Still have our Mutavault. So yeah, cover up is next. Can extract the Mutable Explorer perhaps. So if I draw a land, I can play double corpses and animate Mutavault, which would be pretty strong. They got a good look at our library. Alright, double corpses it is. Hit you for 8. Siren joins the fun. Pit of Offerings exiles more stuff from our graveyard. So they're pretty well prepared to fight graveyard decks, but that's where this Grim Captain deck, while it does use the graveyard to an extent, is not necessarily a fully dedicated graveyard strategy. Sacrifice a non-god. And then Bloodletter means Spyglass is already lethal. Can animate Mutavault, maybe even put a counter here. Alright, and an attack should do it. Exploring with a map, another way to pick up corpses again. And there we go. Alright, so we got to see this latest iteration of the Grim Captain deck in action, and I was quite pleased with the addition of Corpses of the Lost to give the Grim Captain haste, also just a powerful card in the grindier matchups with a lot of ways to enable it and pick it back up, and of course all the Changelings from Lorwyn also make the deck a lot more consistent than before, and it allows us to play the deck in kind of a more mid-range fashion, as opposed to being kind of this hyper-focused Reanimator style deck, where we want to put some huge creatures in the graveyard to get back with the captain. Most games where we do get to craft our Grim Captain, we're already winning anyways, so then we don't need to cheat some huge dinosaur into play afterwards, and being able to hardcast all the creatures we draw is a little bit more reliable. Now, with that being said, this deck is pretty awkwardly positioned in the current standard meta. It's catching a couple strays from other graveyard strategies, which are quite popular, so then we need to have all creatures on the battlefield in order to craft our Grim Captain, which is still possible in this build, so that's not a disaster, but we're also a pretty big underdog against all the Badger Mole ramp decks. I've spared you a few more games against the turn 3 Ouroboros, but those games are usually quite one-sided, especially if we don't have our immediate Grim Captain available. And that also means that because of all these green Ouroboros ramp decks, more sweepers are seeing play in Standard at the moment, which happens to be the best way of removing a hexproof creature like our Grim Captain. So yeah, right now I would not recommend trying this on the ranked ladder, since you're not gonna win a ton of games with it, but maybe in the future if mid-range decks become more popular and a lot of spot removal starts seeing play, then that's where the Grim Captain can really shine and win you some more games. But yeah, for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.